Here's something to ponder while you're out smoking a cigar this week. It's something that I came up with, kind of a thought that I had, and it's kind of crazy, but the question I would like you to ponder, because I'm going to go through my rationale for it, is let's pretend that you were stranded on a remote island somewhere. You weren't going to be rescued for a long, long time, but what you had going for you is an unlimited supply of cigars with a caveat that it's only one brand of cigars. In our little experiment here, you get to pick the brand of cigars. So I think this is an interesting question to talk about. By the way, Jim from Cigars and Other Dude Stuff, let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to walk you through my rationale, and this is my opinion, okay? I'd like to hear your opinion in the comments of the brand or brands, if you don't want to narrow it down to one, two, or three, or four, that you would consider as being remote island worthy. So I started with the universe of cigars. There's many cigars in my research. I went through catalogs and whatnot, and dozens of cigars in my universe of cigars, and I started to narrow those down. And one thing I'm doing in our little experiment here is I'm excluding Davidoff, Padron, and Plasencia cigars. Because if we had a choice, probably a lot of people would pick those. We're going to make it a little harder. So what I did is I took my universe of all those cigars and I came up with some criteria that I want to focus on in making my decision. One thing we want is a wide breadth of cigars of different bodies and flavors to smoke in our brand of cigars. We don't want a cigar brand that's only limited to a couple cigars. So I eliminated those pretty quickly, the ones that don't have a very broad offering. The other thing is overall quality, obviously. We want cigars that are good to smoke, that taste good and have good construction and whatnot, and also consistency. We want to have a good smoke every time. Although in our little mind game here, actually we have an unlimited supply of our cigars. One other caveat I'm going to add in is you have to smoke the cigars that are in their line all in equal quantities. So we might like Oliva Milanos, for example, but we can't smoke just those. We have to smoke all of them in the Oliva line. And last but not least, certainly, is personal preference. So again, that's where my opinion comes in and where your opinion is going to come in when you think about this. So I ended up narrowing it down, and these were my choices. I narrowed it down to CAO, Alec Bradley, Ashton, Oliva, EP Carrillo, Foundation, La Aroma, Monte Cristo US version, Arturo Fuente, My Father, and Rocky Patel. Now keep in mind I started with dozens and got it down to, I think, I don't know, 10 or 11, something like that. But now let's get rid of some of those. Let's talk first about breadth of line. I like CAO from that category, so I'm not going to eliminate them yet. I do like Alec Bradley, although we'll get into other things about Alec Bradley in a minute. Ashtons are great cigars, but their line's pretty narrow. It's 7 cigars. Oliva, I'm going to leave them in. They have good breadth. Again, I love EP Carrillo cigars, but I can't live on only 4 or 5 different cigars. Come on. I mean, I'm going to be making enough sacrifices on that remote island. Foundation's got a broad line, and we'll stick with them. La Roma de Cuba, the US version of it, I'm going to include them. They now have like 9 or 10 different cigars, and they have a nice variety ranging from Connecticut on up to pretty strong cigars. So we're going to leave them in for the time being anyway. Monte Cristo, the non-Cuban cigars. I'm grudgingly going to include them. They have good variety, but we'll talk about them a little bit more on the next level. My Father, I'm leaving in. Obviously, they have a ton of cigars, too many to even name at this point. Rocky Patel, also great selection, kind of falling into the Alec Bradley mold. Maybe a few good ones and a lot of not really good ones. So we'll talk about that in the next step. And that is consistency and quality. So let's revisit CAO. I like CAO's line, generally speaking, but it's one of those brands that has so many cigars and a couple real standouts, Amazon Basin, for example, in Brasilia, and a few of those. But by and large, I don't think it's what I want to live on for months and months and months on my remote island. So I'm going to get rid of them. Alec Bradley, exact same thinking. a few good cigars, lots of other ones. And remember, one of our rules is you have to smoke through the whole brand. You can't just focus on their best ones. Oliva, we're going to leave Oliva in right now because most of their cigars are pretty solid. And I'm not talking about the stuff that they put in catalogs like Baptiste in those brands. I'm talking about their core lines. Among their core lines, I pretty much am happy with all of them, and the rotation gives me enough variety. Foundation, lots of good choices, and pretty much quality all up and down the line. Enough variety to be interesting. La Roma de Cuba, I think we're going to have to knock them out at this point. I like La Roma de Cuba line, but again, I couldn't live on it for months and months and months on a desert island. Monte Cristo non-Cuban version. Alec Bradley, CAO, the same reasoning there. They got a couple of good cigars. If you're talking about 3 good cigars that you could just rotate on your several month journey, that would be okay, but we're not going to do that. Arturo Fuente. Arturo Fuente's got a broad line, and their cigars are pretty much good up and down the line. So we're definitely going to leave them in. Same thing with My Father. Broad selection, and most of their cigars are very, very good. Rocky Patel, back to our reasoning for Alec Bradley and CAO, is a few good ones, a lot that I wouldn't want to smoke on a daily basis if I have to rotate around the whole line. All right, moment of truth here. I'm down to 5, just in case you weren't keeping track. Ashton, Oliva, Foundation, Arturo Fuente, and My Father. Now it comes down to personal preference. I'm going to be a chicken, and I'm going to name 2 because I can't live with only one. So I'm not changing the rules. If it really happened, I'd have to pick one, and I'll tell you which one. But my 2 favorites out of those are My Father and Oliva. Not that they aren't all good; they all are. And honestly, I'd be happy with any of those 5 if I should end up on a remote island. But having to pick between those 2 now, My Father and Oliva, I got to go with Oliva. And Oliva's always been one of my favorite brands, as My Father is too. But Oliva cigars, I like them all. Enough variety to keep me interested, and very good quality up and down the line. You probably disagree, and if you do, let me know in the comments. Hey, this is a kind of a fun thing. Jim from Cigars and Other Dude Stuff. I will see you next time.